Hey, what's going on, everyone? Tonight we're going to do a real quick 7 round mock draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers 2 days before the draft. Let's jump right into it. We're using the Draft Network's mock draft simulator, or mock draft machine, excuse me. Immediately looking at this board, Broderick Jones, Joey Porter Jr., two pretty obvious picks for Pittsburgh in this situation. Honestly, no Deontay Banks. I would have probably taken him over Joey Porter Jr. But in this case, offensive tackle is kind of the thinnest position. There's a lot of corner depth we can get later in the draft. The linebacker help is really not there to begin with. And there's some interior defense line help that's probably better off taking in round 2 than round 1. So I'm going to take Project Jones right away here to replace Dan Moore as a starting tackle. Uh, and then looking at where we're at right now, I probably could have waited, honestly, because Anton Harrison's there at pick 33, and I like Anton Harrison quite a bit as a day one starter as well. Looking at cornerback help, I know some people love Manuel Forbes, but he's like 166 pounds. I'm not really into drafting that type of player. For Pittsburgh, I would prefer Cam Smith or maybe Julius Brents. Uh, I think we can also wait and still get a good cornerback help in the third or fourth round. Looking around interior defense lines, also a big need. This is probably early for Keanu Benton. I would like to get him one pick later. I don't know if he'll be available, but Keanu Benton is certainly a really talented player. I think Pittsburgh should target. We've added depth at guard over the offseason. We added a star in Seumalo, so I'm not really going to go guard here, although I think that could certainly be on the board for Pittsburgh. Maybe even edge depth, depending on the Alex Highsmith contract situation, and looking forward for that. But right now, I think there's really not a ton of guys I'm in love with on the board. Some people might just say like Darnell Washington just because of the pure talent factor that he has and just the one of one type athlete he is for the tight end position. I don't necessarily love his tape. I don't necessarily think he's going to have a high ceiling as a pass catcher in the NFL. Of course, that could be proven wrong. That wouldn't be the first time. Uh, but looking at where the board is falling right now, I'm just going to take Cam Smith. I'm just going to go forward with that. I think he's the best corner on the board. I know there's some questions with him, but I'm comfortable taking him moving forward. And look, we get Keanu Benton anyways at pick 50. I know it seems like it's early in the simulator. The mock draft machine has him ranked 98th. I'm telling you, teams view him much higher than that. And personally, I think his tape is much better than 98th overall in this draft. So you get to pair him with Cameron Hayward and really start beefing up that interior defensive line again. Jumping forward, pick 81 overall. Obviously, some guys like Jimmy Gibbs is not going to be available at this pick, but this is just the nature of mock draft machines. Jack Campbell would be a really nice selection here for us. I know he's not the athletic hybrid type linebacker, hybrid like linebacker slash safety play that someone like Trent Simpson is, or Deion Henley, or Drew Sanders. He doesn't have that kind of coverage capability, but he's really good in zone coverage. And he's a bit of a throwback linebacker, which is sort of to some extent the way I think Pittsburgh might want to go for linebacker going forward because we don't want another Devin Bush experience for a guy who just can't get off blocks and can't defend the run. Uh, Jack Campbell's not that player at all. So I think Jack Campbell would be a good addition here. And I don't think he's really a second round player. I've watched his tape. He could be a late second round player, but I don't think it would be unrealistic for him to fall to the third round. All right, we're into the fourth round outside the top 100 at this point. Looking at the board, there's some good value here. Maybe waiting for DeMarvion Overshown would have been the play had we known he would be available at linebacker in the fourth round, but obviously we didn't at the time. Now is when I start looking at depth pieces. Where can we add along the edge to prepare us for the future? Can we add at wide receiver? The edge is kind of looking a little bit thin right now in terms of guys that would be a good scheme fit for Pittsburgh. So I'm going to go look at wide receiver instead. As soon as I find it, there it is. All right, Michael Wilson, Dontavian Wicks. Nathaniel Dell was an interesting one, but not someone I really love for Pittsburgh. Jaden Reed, Ronnie Bell, Jonathan Mingo would be a really good pickup here. So would Tyler Scott, two speedsters. I'm going to keep an eye on both of them. Sidney Brown's an intriguing one. Brenton Strange actually tight end. I know he says 184, but I think he's better than that. Strange is a bit of a developmental guy, but I would like to add him to this roster just to have him there along with Pat Fryerman. I think two of them together would be a very dynamic tight end duo. All right, now we jump all the way to the seventh round, so it's going to be a long wait. Tyler Scott is here. I'm not going to take him just because that's really unrealistic. He's not going to be here in the actual draft. I don't think Parker Washington will be either. Jalen Cropper might be. I haven't heard a lot of hype about him, but Jalen Cropper is a player who I like quite a bit as like a fifth round pick, maybe in a fourth round pick to some extent. You can see there's a lot of good players on the board who will not make it this far in the actual draft. But kind of sitting back and looking at who might actually be here. Jose Ramirez won't be here. I don't think he would be a great pick though if he was here at this point. I think that'd be like a run the pick in kind of situation. Yeah, a lot of these guys are not going to be here. So I'm trying to keep it a little bit realistic. We're not going to take someone who I know is going to go much higher. Like Yaya Diaby's not going to be here. It's just not happening. Uh, so let's see if we can find someone who's more realistic for like a seventh round pick for Pittsburgh that would address a need and help us get better. Looking through the options, someone like Dante Davis might be worth the pick, honestly. He's got injury history, has not returned to the player he was prior to a significant injury back in 2021. But he could be interesting. Actually, Antoine Green from UNC is going to be my pick here. Decent deep speed. Might even go before the seventh round, but I know some people aren't too high on him. He's a really intriguing player who I think could be more of like a one-dimensional role player in the NFL, but that's worth it in the seventh round. If you're looking for a fairly well-built receiver who's able to threaten guys deep, I think that's worth it. And then one more pick here. I'm just going to look at some running backs. There's a lot of talent here on the board at running back still. And these are guys who I think could potentially fall to the seventh round because of size concerns or just being too one-dimensional. They're role players, obviously, not guys who are going to do much, not guys who are going to be feature backs, certainly, but they're intriguing players nonetheless. And looking through the remaining available pieces, I think I'm going to go. Yeah, we're going to go and stick with corners. I'm taking Anthony Johnson from Virginia. He's probably going to transition to safety, in my opinion, because he didn't run that well. And he's a big dude with really long arms. I think there's a shot he falls this far because we've seen this happen before with some Virginia defensive backs who just don't test well. They're big, they got long arms, they just don't test well. And they don't fall in until late in the draft or going undrafted. Think about something like Jermaine Waller from a couple of years ago. Anthony Johnson, well, I think Waller might have been Virginia Tech actually, but Anthony Johnson has the build of a safety. He's played outside corner, and I think he is honestly a pretty good pick. Like he plays better than his speed suggests from his combine time and his other track times. I think he's going to be a much better athlete in the NFL. I think he's going to be a much more impactful defender than the way he's being evaluated right now. But I could see where he falls to the seventh round. And at that point, I think he's a bargain for Pittsburgh. So recapping this draft really quickly, new starting left tackle, new starting outside corner, Keanu Benton, who will hypothetically become the player that kind of takes over for Cam Hayward as a do-it-all guy in the middle of the defense. Jack Campbell can be a new starting linebacker. Brenton Strange is going to be a backup developmental tight end behind Freiermuth, who could add more value to the offense going forward. And then, of course, Antoine Green, a bit of a one-dimensional receiver who can add some value to you as a depth piece. And then Anthony Johnson, like I said, who could transition to safety. Will be a special teamer for certain, but will be potentially a dynamic safety even because he played outside corner in college and was fairly good at it. There's a lot of good tape out there for Anthony Johnson, Virginia, and making him transition to safety might be a bit of a multi-year process, but overall, I think it would pay off.